What is up, nation? AJ Reilly here for another edition of The Corner, getting ready to preview our series, the Detroit Tigers series with the Oakland Athletics. And I say it's a series because it is technically a series, but it is a day-night doubleheader on Thursday. The team has traveled from the All-Star break to Oakland to play two games, and then they will head into a weekend two-game series with the Minnesota Twins. So today we're going to preview. We're going to preview those two games with the Athletics, but we're going to start in the leadoff talking about the MLB draft again, and I have Tyler Kotila back with us, friend of the show, Tyler Kotila. Tyler, thank you again for joining us. The draft is over. It started Sunday, and it is done as of Tuesday. There were 20 selections made. And would you believe if I told you that this is the first time in 20 rounds of the MLB draft that the Detroit Tigers did not select a high school player? Would you believe that?
No, honestly, I didn't even know that. That's wow.
I mean, obviously, had the draft been longer, they probably would have, but they did not select a high school player. Now, to me, this is going to signal one of two things. Either there's a little bit of a philosophy change, or we have a general manager making these selections going, these guys better get here quick to help me save my job. Is kind of the way that I'm viewing this a little bit. Just given the fact that, it was a different draft than what we're used to, right? Because you had in the first 9 picks, they did not pick in the third round because they lost that pick when they signed Eduardo Rodriguez. So they didn't pick in the third round. So they had 9 picks in the first 10 rounds. 6 of those picks were college bats. 3 of those picks were college arms. What do you make of that to start?
I mean, like we talked about early on, we really wanted that impact college bat, and with the heavy presence on the college bats, like just kick things off. It kind of made me think that they not listened to us, obviously, but they had their priorities right. They had their stuff in line to, hey, we're going to try and boost the position players within the organization. I mean, we made the joke about it last time that there is no help in the minors right now. That's position players that are like those top tier guys. Like,
Right.
there's some names that stand out, but there was nobody that's like blown away as like the top prospect, like the Reilly Greens and the Spencer Torkelsons of the world. Like, we don't have that next guy. And the Tigers went out and were like, let's get that guy. Let's try and get a couple of them that could be those types of players. And I think that's why they went so college bat heavy early on, which is great. I can't complain as a Tigers fan for sure.
No, we definitely can't complain. They did take I would say, big bat with their number 12 overall pick, even though, the guy you wanted was taken 2 picks earlier, Gavin Cross, to the Royals nonetheless. So now it's not like we're going to get rid of him at all. We've got to now see him. But, okay, he wasn't there, so we could not pick him, right? On the board was another guy that you had talked about, Chase Delaughter, and another guy that we had mentioned that didn't even think was going to be there at 12 in Cam Collier, the 17-year-old junior college reclassified so that he could be in this draft. And they didn't pick either one of those guys. They picked Jace Jung, a second baseman, played a little bit of third base his freshman year, we were talking. That did not go so well. So he really probably projects as a second baseman, but he is a lefty that can hit the ball.
Yes. I I'm still mixed feelings about it. Like, I did the draft grades piece, and it was hard to put a grade on that. I can't give him an F. Like, he's a first round draft pick. He's going to be a good player. Like, we didn't take him at 12 because we knew he wasn't going to be bad. The Tigers didn't go out and say, let's draft this guy at 12, thinking, oh, he's just not going to pan out. Let's
Right.
leave the other guys on the board. The
Right.
bat and the hit and the power tools are there. He's gonna hit, and he's gonna hit for power. Like that's very apparent. And like I mentioned last time, like I just don't love the way he like stands in the box. He's got the weird bat waggle going backwards. It reminds me of Matt Olson. Rather than being, with the hands like out over the plate, his is just out and then kind of tilted backwards. And it's just a personal thing for me to like nitpick on it. I just don't love it. But is it to say the swing's wrong? No, it's a power producing swing. He's gonna barrel up the ball. He's gonna hit for power. And in Comerica Park, he's probably gonna have a little bit more doubles than he is home runs if he's gonna work pull side with his approach. But even then, if he can work gap to gap, totally fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, and
We talked about that, right? It's building those profile players that fit your ballpark. And so, I mean, he doesn't from everything I can understand. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you've dug into these prospects and you know these guys like the back of your hand. But a very solid approach at the plate, correct? Not going to strike out a ton.
yeah, the plate discipline is a lot better with him. He's selective, like not to the point where he's going to take too many strikes and get punched out on him, but he's going to
Sure.
look for the right pitch to do damage with, and he's going to maybe take a few strikes here and there, work into deeper into counts. Maybe instead of just going up there free swinging, he's going to try and sit on that
Yeah.
pitch. But I like it. It's the other
And
areas that worry me.
the defensive stuff, and we'll get to the defensive stuff. We're gonna break him down specifically because, I mean, he's obviously the first round pick. But one thing that I noticed with him, and I talked about this a little bit on the live home run derby show that I did when we did a watch party on Monday night. But when he is not behind in the count, when he does not have two strikes on, he's got two different stances. It looked like in the box, he's got a real kind of almost open to a leg kick that's going to drive into that power without two strikes. But then when he gets two strikes on him, he really widens out. Choked in one at bat I was watching, really choked up, but it didn't diminish his ability to barrel the ball up. It wasn't like he was Mickey Morandini just like slapping it to left field, right? I mean, he still was able to, as you say, work that pull side. And the at bat that I saw, he ripped a single to right field and then went Oppo Taco with a home run after that. So good approach. But the weakness is the weakness the glove or is the weakness the arm?
I think it's a mix of both. I think it's
Okay.
kind of like Nick Castellanos once he got to the bigs, and we were like, cool, he's our shortstop. And then the Tigers get into the big leagues, and they're like, we're going to stick him at third base. And then we're like, okay, he can't do a whole lot over there. We're going to put him at first. And then that didn't work, and let's move him to the outfield. And I think that's might be a similar track with him is he couldn't play third at the collegiate level. That doesn't give me any reason to believe that if they had to move him to second at the collegiate level, that we're going to try and throw him out there at third at the
Right.
professional level
Sure.
and it work out well. And I mean, maybe it works out. Maybe the guy, the Tigers approaching and they're saying, hey, we want you to go take 100 ground balls every single day after practice on top of whatever work we're putting you through, work on it, and it works out great. That's awesome. But I feel like he's the second baseman for us right now. And for the Tigers' future, it might end up looking like he needs to get moved again. But the thing is, I was talking about it
Where?
with a friend. Where do you put a guy who can't play second base? Like, you have a shortstop who can't play second. Maybe he ended up bulking up too much. He's not as rangy as he is. So you move him over to third base. Or it's the guy who just gets older, doesn't have the arm strength. You move him to second base. Where do you put the second baseman? Left field? Stick him in left and hope, the bat just carries him there. So I think that's something that worries me a little bit. Like, the athleticism itself isn't my favorite. Like, he's a bigger guy.
Stocky kid.
Yeah. So, but again, I shouldn't say a whole lot there because Prince Fielder made millions of dollars playing for the Detroit Tigers, and he wasn't exactly the rangiest of people.
Also very true.
So,
Very true. So you wrote a piece for Detroit Sports Nation grading the draft picks, and you just graded the first 5 draft picks. And you gave this selection a C- because you couldn't give it an F, is what you specifically said. Now, I know we don't want to bag on it too much because, I mean, there is a little bit of hope here. We have a lefty that can hit the ball and works counts. And one thing that I read about him is that he's not going to necessarily lose you games in the field, but he won't really impact you in the field either. He's just kind of a kind of fielder. Um, but then the second pick, Peyton Graham from Oklahoma, you gave this an A plus. Why did you give Peyton Graham in the second? It was in the second round. Why did you give him an A plus?
So let me backtrack like a little bit there and then kind of lead that into the
Okay.
Graham pick. So the Jung at 12 pick, I you can't give him an F. Hitting tools and the power tools are there. He's gonna hit. He's gonna hit well. He's gonna hit for power from the left side. There's no question about that. I'm not trying to argue with anybody that he's a bust at 12. It was horrible. The reason I wanted to give him an F is because I was very underwhelmed by the pick. I mean, like we just talked about,
Yeah.
there was other names
Mm-hmm.
on the board that I was fully invested in, thinking that they were going to be much better big leaguers down the road than what Jay Sean was going to be for us. And I think that's why I was so like disappointed and why I wanted to just keep knocking that grade down, was because the defense is not my favorite, and there were just many other names on the board that I liked a lot better. And like I said in the first time in the pre-draft show, it's not to say Jay Young is not going to be a great player and end up being an all-star for the Detroit Tigers. All of it's based on my opinion and based on what I'm seeing, and everybody has their own opinion on things. So I guess for me, it's just one of those things where I would have rather had like Collier or Delaughter, but Young is still a
For
good
sure.
pick. So it's like I slapped the C on it because the hit tools and the power are there. But it's like more of a personal knock of like, we're going to knock that down a little bit just because I would have rather had some of the other guys on the board.
Yeah, C's get degrees, man. And coming from education, I can tell you when you just don't necessarily want to fail somebody, but they didn't really pass. It's like, nah, we'll slap a C on there, and then we'll put a little dash next to it just to make it look slightly above a D. But let's move to Peyton Graham. So why an A plus for Peyton Graham?
The first thing, it was a steal of a pick. He shouldn't have been on the draft board at that point, in my opinion. I thought he was going to be a lot higher, but I really like what value we're going to get from him at the pick. I think it was like pick 51 or so in the second round after like the comp rounds and the little like throw in picks between it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the upside there and the projectability. So he's a shortstop right now. He played for that Oklahoma team this year, who was pretty hot, pretty streaky, and I think a lot of their players' draft stock kind of got a little bit of a bump from their performance this year. And Graham's performance is definitely one of them. And he hits for power, and it's a common theme for a lot of the guys, a lot of the hitters that the Tigers took this draft is they hit for power. They find a way to get the ball up in the air. They lift it well, leverage the baseball. We're not going to complain about that, but
No, because you got a team that's only hit 53 home runs through 80 plus
yeah.
games. Yeah, brutal.
Um,
Anyways,
and,
continue.
and I like Graham for the future because I don't think he's going to be a shortstop. He's 6'3", a little bit smaller right now, but I think if they get him into a big league program for like lifting and just the development plan that they work him through, he might put a little bit of weight on and become that more like that third baseman that we've been looking for. And he's
Yeah,
also got the opportunity to move the outfield because he's also athletic. So if they say, you know what, we're good with his frame and how he looks right now, he's athletic enough. Let's just try and shift him in the outfield. That's an option too. But I don't think
nice.
shortstop's the home long term. But that's okay. I don't. In his case, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that it's like, oh, he's coming in as a shortstop, but that's not going to be the case forever. It's like he's coming in as a shortstop. We should probably move him to third, bulk him up, maybe capitalize on that power. Or, hey, let's move him into the outfield and put his athleticism to use because he's got really good instincts, I'm sure, too.
Pr- Pretty slick, smooth
Yeah,
fielder.
very smooth defensively, like good instincts, good first step. So it's one of those things where like he may not be the rangiest like star Gold Glove shortstop, but like he's got the tools to be a good defender.
Awesome. Which one of these two do you think makes it through the minors the quickest?
Young, for sure.
You definitely think John?
The
You end of next season?
it, I could see it just because of how advanced his tools are, like in the batter's box,
Okay.
especially with like hitting's going to be way more important than fielding in his base running. Like as a prospect, the way you grade him out. So it makes sense to, want to say that he's going to be able to make it to the big leagues quicker with the hit and the power tools carrying him. So
Gotcha.
I think that it's a real possibility for sure. Um, it's just going to depend on how quickly he gets into the system and how quickly he shows those tools and how like if he gets into the Tigers organization and starts hitting bombs left and right, he's going to move quick.
So we're gonna kind of rapid fire these next one. They take Troy Melton, a right-handed pitcher out of San Diego State. You gave that a B plus. Give me a quick rundown on him.
Um, the breaking ball, really good body, really good mechanics, clean and repeatable, but the breaking ball needs to be improved. Fastball, changeup are good. Good life on the fastball. Changeup's got some good fade to it. Um, Mixing in a breaking ball is pretty slurvy right now. So I think get him into the Tigers organization with Chris Fetter probably having a say in what's going on and him being such an elite college level pitcher or pitching coach that I think that he'd be able to do it with Melton and kind of work through that and develop his arsenal more.
I'm sensing a theme with the bats that they drafted too, because then after Melton was Luke Gold, who's a second baseman and third baseman from Boston College, and then also Danny Soretti, who's a switch hitting shortstop out of North Carolina. Are we looking at depth pieces here with maybe a Soretti, or are we looking at somebody who could be, one of those guys that is in a lineup that is solid, not going to be a superstar, but two picks that could be really solid?
I think Gold is the better of the two. I think he has a chance to be a big league third baseman down the road. He's not going to like blow the doors off and be some crazy high tier prospect. Uh, he's a smaller guy, but they're strengthened, like smaller, like height wise, but bigger frame. Um, really good
Yeah.
ability.
6 foot,
Yeah, good
220.
ability to leverage.
220,
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
so
220.
he's a little bit, stockier, but like still, able to show some strength in the swing. And I think that he's going to produce barrels, like just the way his swing path looks, like it's very clean, and he's able to like get under the baseball and not get too far under it and pop things up. So I like him more than I like Soretti. I think Soretti's somebody who's kind of in a position bind. He's a shortstop for UNC's where we took him out of, but I think that he's someone that kind of still needs to find his home, if that makes sense. Like he's just not great, but he's a
Sure.
high reward pick if it works out. Low risk, high reward for sure. Switch hitter could possibly turn into someone who hits for pop from both sides. There's more pop from the right side
Nice.
than there is from the left side, so I think lefties he's more of a slap hitter. Well, not necessarily a slap hitter, but it's more contact than it is power. Just the ability to
Sure.
get the barrel to the baseball and find some green out in the outfield. So I think that's kind of where his niche is going to be. But if the bat carries him, I mean, it could be a high reward pick. But I think it like you were saying, it's more of a depth pick. Like, hey, we'll throw him in the organization. He's another shortstop. We'll see what happens, and low risk, high reward.
Yeah. Everybody's a shortstop coming
Yeah,
up, right? I mean, that's just the way that baseball. I mean, everybody is a shortstop or has played shortstop when you've gotten to this level, and so then you figure out where they can fit and fill long term. Well, that is kind of a recap of the first 5 picks. Probably the ones that will make the most impact, would you say? Anybody later in the draft that we got that you think is going to be like, man, that was a bigger steal than even, um, what's his name out of Oklahoma?
well,
Now I
Peyton
can't
Graham.
even remember. Yeah, Graham out of Oklahoma, a bigger steal that could make a huge impact, like that ninth round Tarek Skubal kind of thing. Might jump up the
I'll
prospect
rapid fire a
rankings.
couple names for you. Ninth round
Okay,
again this year. Georgia Tech, Andrew Jenkins, first baseman for them, right-handed hitter, really good power hitter, more doubles and home runs than anything. Bigger guy again. Obviously, we don't need a first baseman. We've got the future first baseman with us right now. Like we're hoping Torkelson's that guy, but he's someone to keep an eye on. He's athletic enough to where we could maybe move him to a corner outfield position if like he starts tearing the cover off the baseball and he's hitting home runs left and right. Then maybe we say, hey, let's get your glove going for left and right field and see what we can do there. He's athletic enough. He's not too big, but there's some strength in the swing. Then in the 13th round, they took Dominic Johnson from the Kansas State Wildcats. He's an outfielder, super small, 5'9", I think like 200 or so, but still hits for power.
wow,
So he's
nice.
more of a gap to gap guy. I think he's someone that's going to live like more power and home runs from the left or in the left center gap, and then right center gap's more double and triples. Just like speaking to Comerica's Park,
Sure.
just the way that the field lays out, I think that's how he'll kind of grade out. Like more living gap to gap, and then just more of a pull side approach if he's trying to do damage, but not being afraid to like work a pitch backside because he's very disciplined. So he's a tough out. Like smaller guy height wise, so it's a smaller strike zone, and he's not afraid to like work, foul off the fastball on that pitch that should be a chase pitch, or just get a hold of a breaking ball low that may be out of the zone but could get the call that he'll foul it off and then get a missed pitch and drive it. So I kind of like him for that reason. And then in the 15th round, they took a pitcher, Patrick Pridgen from FIU. He's from Florida International. I read something from Tyrion Alexander, just like a baseball fanatic that dives into a bunch of like the publicly available data, that said that his cutter was a criminally underused pitch. And I was like, okay, this could be interesting. Wow. So I kind of read up on it. And
right.
Right now it's a fastball slider changeup mix. The fastball's up to 97. Good life to it. Commands it well. Lives more, mid 90s and starts more low 90s later on. Standard issue for that. Righty, but the cutter itself, like, it's deceptive with the slider. Mixing the fastball, his generic fastball, his cutter, and his slider together makes for a really dangerous pitch mix. And the article I read was right. Like, I'm not going to steal credit for what he was saying or anything, but definitely check it out. Tyrion Alexander, he was just like a personal blog post thing that he had, and it was very like smart and about like how he should use the cutter more and tunnel it with his slider, because his slider is a wipeout pitch, like mid 80s, good sweep to it, and he works it like front door and back door.
So future, that sounds like a profiles to me as a future bullpen
100%.
piece.
Maybe tell him, hey, let's try and get more 96, 97 out of you than 90, 92 late in the start. And basically, instead of saying, hey, you're going to go throw 100 pitches today, it's like, okay, you got 20 pitches.
I need you to throw 20.
Give me 100 miles an hour out of your fastball.
Everything that you have, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Overall grade for the Tigers draft, and should fans feel cautiously optimistic about the way this went?
I'm going to say a B, just a straight B, like B flat. And I think there's potential to be up to like an A minus.
Okay. Should fans feel cautiously optimistic about the way this draft went?
I think like optimism for sure. So, I mean, like I said, I gave the C minus or the unofficial F to Young. It's more of an emotional, opinionated reaction, but he's going to be a good ball player. I wish we would have ended up.
It's tough, though, when you have somebody like Cam Collier sitting there who has a better arm, profiles better defensively, but also has that left-handed bat so I was underwhelmed with the pick as well. I was kind of like, oh, man, like Collier literally fell in your lap. And I told you on the pre-draft show, for me, Collier was kind of like Nick Madrigal a few years ago when we drafted Casey Mize. And I love the fact that we drafted Casey Mize. But I just had this gut feeling about Madrigal that was the way that it needed to go. And that's kind of the same situation with Collier this year as well. So we'll see. I'm grateful that they actually took bats. 6 of their first 9 picks were bats. And what it sounds like is good profile bats. Not just Joey Gallo all-or-nothing type bats. They took guys that actually can command a strike zone and up that on-base percentage without actually putting the ball in play, which is good. But when they do put the ball in play, they hit the ball hard. So I am also cautiously optimistic, even though I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to this team. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how they can get to 500 this season, even though I know it's a statistical impossibility almost at this point. But it's good, right? It's a good change of pace from the muck and mire that the first half was for the Tigers. This could not have come, I don't think, at a better time. We did talk a little bit about it on the Home Run Derby live show that I did, but now I got the man, the perfect game, national scouting coordinator, Tyler Kotila stopping by again to break down this draft. Tyler, I thank you so much for being here, man. Enjoy watching those baseball games. I look forward to getting some more information from you when we start talking about prospects and maybe making their way to the major leagues. And for sure, if we make trades come the deadline, we need to know what is going on with these guys that we
Sounds
got.
good. I
All right,
appreciate
man.
it. Thank you, AJ. It was a pleasure.
Thanks again, Tyler. We will see
Sounds
you
good.
again soon, buddy. All right, I want to thank Tyler Kotila, National Scouting Coordinator for Perfect Game, for joining me on the corner to discuss the Tigers draft. There is a reason to be cautiously optimistic about them. Before we get into the recap, or the preview, I should say, for the Oakland Athletics doubleheader on Thursday, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe at YouTube. Make sure you're hitting that bell, click that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on Twitter at DSN at the corner for all Tigers news and updates. So let's talk about the Athletics. That's who the Tigers are heading over to play coming off the All-Star break. They do sit at 32-61. They are a rebuilding team, much like the Tigers are. And it's going to be a rough day in Oakland as far as baseball is concerned, because you have two teams that are bottom of the barrel in MLB in just about every statistical category. They do play Thursday afternoon at 3:37 in Oakland, and then they have a nightcap game to follow that. And so let's get into these pitching matchups. According to Fangraphs, now this is obviously subject to change, but according to Fangraphs, Game 1's going to showcase Tarek Skubal against Zach Logue. Tarek Skubal 6-8 with 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's walking about 2 batters per 9 innings. Has an elevated ERA at 4.11, but his FIP, that fielding independent pitching, is only a 3.02, which means he's gotten quite unlucky in the defense converting outs into or balls in play into outs, much like we saw in that 4th inning against Kansas City in his last start. One of the things that is haunting Tarek specifically is his 315 batting average on balls in play. He's going to face off, as I said, against Zach Logue, who's 3-4. He strikes out about 7 per 9 innings, going to walk about 3 per 9 innings. He has a very elevated ERA at 5.16, and a FIP that matches that, even worse, at 5.84. So there's definitely opportunities for the Tigers to get back on the winning side of things in Game 1 if they can just make Logue work and put the ball into play, and then Skubal pitching to the point that 3.02 FIP actually indicates. So it definitely is very important the Tigers have good at bats. You know, you got a guy that's only striking out about 7 per 9, so not even 1 per inning. You got to work those at bats. You definitely have to get the ball in play. You definitely have to make things happen, because the A's, as we're going to talk about, are decent defensively. Game 2, according to Fangraphs, is going to be 27th man Garrett Hill facing off against Frankie Montas. Again, these are projections by Fangraphs, so they are subject to change. But Garrett Hill will start one game today. Tarek Skubal will start the other. Garrett Hill, we know, is 1-1. He's had 2 major league starts. He's only struck out about 3 per 9 innings, walked about 2.5 per 9 innings. He has a very elevated ERA because of the start that he had in Kansas City, but his FIP matches it. It's not, necessarily the balls are not being converted to outs. It's the fact that he just didn't pitch well in Kansas City. And that's going to happen, right? Small sample size. We know he battled through. We know that he got through, I think it was 5 innings in Kansas City, even after a disastrous start. And so he'll be up as the 27th man to get that pitching rotation set the right way. And he's going to be facing off against the ace, Frankie Montas of the Athletics, who's 3-9. He's striking out about 9.3 per 9 innings, walking only 2 batters per 9 innings, and has an ERA at 3.26, a FIP at 3.30. So he's pitching very consistently. Does have a 2.79 batting average on balls in play against. So if you don't want to get swept in Oakland, you got to get to Zach Logue in Game 1, because it's going to be very difficult with the holes in our lineup for the Tigers to scratch across enough runs to beat Frankie Montas. It this is the time, right? This is the second half. Everything that happened before, you can't do anything about. So it's time to get off, and it's the moment to get off on the right foot for the Tigers in this second half. Skubal going game one, Garrett Hill going game two. I do want to also make mention that there were some roster moves made this morning that were announced. Zach Short has been recalled from AAA. And then Will Vest was put on the paternity list. So the Tigers are down a bullpen arm there, and so they recalled Cody Clemens as well. So Zach Short and Cody Clemens will be hopping up into the Major League roster for the time being. One of them will probably stick around until Torkelson is back. Because we do know that before the All-Star break, they sent Torkelson down to get some work with the AAA club. Just some more at-bats, try to figure out what's going on with him at the plate and why he's missing so many balls middle too often, way too often. So as we do with every preview, we talk about what does the team that we're facing, what do they do well, what do they not do well. Well, according to the Fangraphs, advanced defensive metrics, that dashboard on Fangraphs, the Athletics are ranked 5th in those defensive metrics. They're 12th overall in outs above average. However, this is about the only thing that they really do well. As far as hitting statistics, they rank right above the Tigers. I mean, they strike out as much as the Tigers. They walk as little as the Tigers. They're not a good baseball team. Their record indicates it. We know that they sold off and they're rebuilding. And we also know that they, are a Moneyball team. They're a lower market team that doesn't spend a lot of money and have become a farm system for a lot of other teams in the past. And so they just are not great. They don't hit the ball well. Their pitching is average at best. Their bullpen is not great. And so you definitely want to get into that bullpen as quickly as you can. You definitely want to get to starter Zach Logue this afternoon to make sure that they you get at least one win in Oakland, because Oakland came into Comerica Park, if you remember, and they had that weird 5-game series in 4 days. And they took 4 of those 5 games from the Tigers earlier in the season. So it is imperative that the Tigers get back on track at some point here and win, at least one of these games. Obviously, sweeping the doubleheader would be a great start to the second half, but it's not going to be easy. What do the Athletics not do well? They don't hit for power. They strike out about as much as the Tigers do, and they walk as little as the Tigers do. So for each team, like being bad baseball teams, essentially, the key is going to be capitalizing on mistakes. Do you walk that first batter of the inning and making sure that he gets around to score? There's going to be mistakes that are made, and which team capitalizes on those mistakes will be the team that comes out victorious. It's not going to be the best baseball that we've ever seen, but it's a prime opportunity for, we talk about the numbers on the back of the baseball cards and how our veterans just are not meeting those numbers. This is a perfect opportunity to start the good feeling in the bat with the glove to get things on the right track for the second half. You're 18 games under 500, the Tigers, to start the second half of the season. 18 games. If you want to minimize that number in the second half, you have to win the games you're supposed to win. And on paper, the Tigers are a better team. Will it play out that way? We don't know. We'll see. Hopefully they're heading into Minnesota this weekend with 2 wins under their belt. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they come out of the gates in the second half after the All-Star break. And now that the All-Star break is done, it's time to start focusing our attention on the trade deadline, which is August 2nd. And there's been one name in trade rumors that is going to garner the most amount of attention, and that's Juan Soto. because Juan Soto is arguably the best player in Major League Baseball at this given time. He's only 23 years old with numbers that are comparable to a guy we know well in Miguel Cabrera. It was reported that the Washington Nationals offered him a 15-year, $440 million extension that he turned down. And so because of him turning that down, they are now seeking to trade him. So that gets everybody thinking of, what can we offer to make sure that he is a part of our team? Teams like the Yankees, teams like the Dodgers, the Cubs, the White Sox, all those teams, the Red Sox, anybody like that are going to be making a push. Maybe not the Cubs, because they're more in the situation like the Tigers are, but teams like that, Toronto, are going to be looking to make a deal for Juan Soto, and that deal is going to be blockbuster. Absolutely blockbuster. It's going to be entirely insane, the haul that the Washington Nationals get for Juan Soto. So then let's talk about that in terms of Tigers, right? What would the Tigers have to give up in order to get Juan Soto? Well, the starting point would be Reilly Green. That's the starting point. He would have to be included in a deal for Juan Soto. And it would probably take 2 or 3 of our other top 10 guys. Jackson Jobe would be another name that would be included to get Juan Soto. Now, do you want Juan Soto playing for your team? Yes, you absolutely want Juan Soto playing for your team. There's no doubt about that. But is the cost too high? Yes, an extension would have to be included in the deal. It would have to be guaranteed that he would sign with your team, but is it worth it? Is it worth it? Now, the Tigers have made a deal like this in the past when they traded Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller and some other guys for Miguel Cabrera. Okay? But they had a foundation laid. Do we have a foundation laid now? I don't think that it is in the cards for the Tigers to trade for Juan Soto. I think that the price would be too high. Now, you may hear me say that I wouldn't trade Reilly Green for Juan Soto. That's not what I'm saying, and I want to be very clear about that. Okay, I firmly believe that parades are much cooler than prospects, to quote Casey Stern. But the price to acquire him would not be a team building move. You have a roster right now that is made up of very few players that would be in the lineup for a good team. Javi would be. Green probably would be, even though he may not even be up, depending on who what team that is. Barnhart, because he's a good defensive catcher. But does Grossman crack a starting lineup on a good team right now? I don't know. Does Scope? I don't know. Candelario doesn't. The Castros are probably on the bench, coming off the bench. So, when you have a roster that is built that way, can you afford to make a deal for a guy like this that is going to cost you potentially half of your top 10 prospects? Now, if they were to include like a Steven Strasburg type contract that the Tigers ate and took maybe one of those prospects away, maybe a Patrick Corbin type contract that helps lower the price tag a little bit, maybe. But that deal still includes Reilly Green. That deal still includes, maybe some of your other top prospects. And the question is that just too much? I think it is. And I may be crazy, because Juan Soto is fantastic. But when you look long term, what's the better value? If you offered me Juan Soto for Reilly Green straight up, I would take it 100%. To be clear. But when we talk about the absolute cost that it is going to be to bring him to Detroit, I just don't see it happening. And then there's the whole other aspect that we're not really talking about. Why do we think that he turned down 15 years of guaranteed money at $440 million? Well, he's not happy in Washington, is a conclusion that you could make, an assumption that you could make. He doesn't want to spend 15 years. Yes, the Washington Nationals are worse than the Tigers right now. But he also won a World Series with them. Do you think that he would be happy in Detroit? I don't know. Considering that we don't really have the foundation that we had laid when we traded for Miguel Cabrera. Would he be happy? Would he be looking to get out? Could it create more problems? It could. And in a lot of ways, the devil that you know is a lot better than the devil that you don't know. And so when it comes to Juan Soto, he's going to get traded. He won't be a National, but he may be a National for the rest of the season. It could be an off-season deal for sure. But definitely come August 2nd, it could be the biggest deal that we are talking about for a long time. This is going to be epic. I don't think the Tigers will be in the mix. If they are in the mix and there is some kind of haul, that if there is some way that our GM is savvy enough to make a deal that doesn't include Reilly Green, that's a huge win. I don't think it's possible. I think Reilly Green is the starting point in any conversation with Juan Soto. But I just don't think it would be worth it in the long run to make a deal like this and have to sign a guy to the type of contract that you just spent 6 years getting out of. I'm not saying those contracts aren't going to be handed out by the Tigers in the future. They probably will be. But is right now, when your rebuild is not 100% over, is right now the time to be handing them out? I just don't think it is. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. But I'm just not making this deal in order to build a good, solid, long-standing team. This type of deal just doesn't do that for you. So maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm not. But what I do know is that the Tigers are taking on the Athletics in a doubleheader. And then I will be back with you on Saturday for the preview of the Minnesota series. There's going to be 2 games in Minnesota because I got a little funky schedule with this lockout-infected schedule. So have a great rest of your day. Look forward to watching 2 Tigers games tonight. And as always, go Tigers.